Well, good morning, everyone. My name is James Sanderson, and it is Election Day 2024. And the lesson that I'm giving here today, as you can see, is coming out of the Old Testament, but I think it's a great lesson for us to learn on this election day. We're going to see just how in control God is, and how God can bring good things out of bad things. And we're thankful for that. So I don't know how things are going to end up today, but here's the lesson for today. Trust God, and I think this lesson will help us. So we are in this series of trying to connect the whole Bible together. It's called God's Love Story. It's lesson number 22, but there's kind of a section in this that we've been really looking at in the last 2 weeks, and that's the last days of Judah. And we're learning some lessons from history, and we need history. It seems like less and less history is being taught in our schools. And when that happens, we don't learn those lessons from history and how we can not make the mistakes of people of the past. Well, it's the same thing with the Bible. The Bible is a history book, and we're going to look at these lessons today and learn some lessons from history so that we don't make these mistakes that people did in the past. So let's get started today. So here's a little advertisement for you. You are on my YouTube channel if you're watching this video. If you want to get back on there and watch some other videos about the Bible, you can type in Saving Souls in the 21st Century. You're going to see two channels there. The picture of me standing there behind the pulpit is actually my newer videos. I also have a website, savingsouls.net, and you can get on there and you can find out all about me and my workshops and things I do. And when you get on these videos, I would really ask that you hit the like button. And if you're not a subscriber on my YouTube channel, please subscribe to that channel. That will really help get these videos out to the world. Thank you so very much. Now let's get to the lesson. So again, we're connecting the Old and the New Testaments together. So what can we learn from the tribe of Judah? All right, so let's just put ourselves in this history here. So the history behind Judah. How did Judah all come about? Well, we know Judah was one of the 12 tribes of Israel. And they went into the land, and God gave them the land. And then eventually they wanted a king. God tried to tell them, you don't need a king. Why don't you just let me as God be your king? And they weren't good enough with that, so they had King Saul, and then King David, and then King Solomon. Well, King Solomon married a lot of wives. That brought in a lot of other gods into the country, and that split the tribes. So 10 went to the north, they're called Israel. 2 went to the south, that's called Judah. And here's a list of their kings. And we went through this in lessons before. And so here's a list of those kings. Now, eventually, God is going to take the northern tribe away with hooks in their nose by the Assyrians in 722 BC because they got away from God. And all the kings on this side of Israel were evil. Okay? But Judah is still in place. And that's what we're looking at now. We want to just focus on Judah. Israel to the north is gone. So in this lesson, just picture that they don't exist anymore. They're taken away into slavery. And now we just got the tribe of Judah to the south. And what we're really focusing on is the last days of Judah. So we're looking at these kings here. Now we've already looked at King Josiah. But we're going to really look at the rest of these kings today. And then eventually Judah will be gone in 586 BC. And they also will be hauled away into slavery. And this is the lessons that we want to learn today. Okay, we don't want to make the mistakes that these people made. So let's just review a little bit with King Josiah. We find him in 2 Kings 22 and 2 Chronicles 34 and 35. Now he was a good king. But here's his last moments here, okay? 2 Kings 23 says, while Josiah was king, Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, went up to the Euphrates River to help the king of Assyria. So they bond together. They're going to help each other. The Assyrians and the Egyptians, they used to hate each other and fight against each other, but now they're friends. You know how that works. And here's King Josiah. Now Pharaoh Necho is coming up the side of Israel. And King Josiah marched out to meet him in battle. But Necho faced him and killed him at Megiddo. Now, this is connecting us to the book of Revelation, the battle of Armageddon. It comes from this word Megiddo. It's a valley where a lot of battles took place. Josiah's servants brought his body in a chariot from Megiddo to Jerusalem and buried him in his own tomb. Now that he's dead, watch what happens. And the people of the land took Jehoahaz, son of Josiah, and anointed him and made him king in the place of Josiah, of him. Okay? So now a new king is in place. His son, Jehoahaz. Here's the valley of Megiddo. This is where this battle that they were trying to get, where King Josiah died at. Okay? Let me put it on the map here for you. Now this happened in 608 BC. All right, just north of Jerusalem. This is where King Josiah went out and met him, and he is killed. Okay. Now we have King Jehoahaz, and we're going to find him in 2 Kings 23 and 2 Chronicles 36. Not a lot said about the guy. 2 Chronicles tells us, then the people of the land took Jehoahaz, spelled a little differently depending on your translation. Okay, it's the same guy. The son of Josiah, made him king in place of his father in Jerusalem. Jehoahaz was 23 years old, excuse me, when he became king, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem. Doesn't reign long, does he? A lot of things are happening to the southern tribe of Judah in a very short period of time. Then the king of Egypt deposed him at Jerusalem. So the king of Egypt is going to come back, Pharaoh Necho, after the battle that he fights up there with the Assyrians against the Babylonians. He's going to come back and he's going to say, you know what? You belong to me now. Okay? And he imposed on the land a fine of 100 talents of silver and 1 talent of gold. Okay, so they kind of take over Judah. The king of Egypt made Eliakim, his brother, okay, king over Judah and Jerusalem, and changed his name to Jehoiakim. But Necho took Jehoahaz, his brother, and brought him to Egypt. So now they got another king. And now they have somebody else ruling them. Now just imagine this. You got a king, a good king, and he's dead. Okay, Josiah. Okay, then the Egyptians come in, they take you over, okay, and they knock out his son, who was put in place, Jehoahaz. He's out, and they put another person in, his brother, Jehoiakim, in, and he's going to rule. All right, now all this is happening in a period of 3 months. A lot of stuff on a nation, okay? So there they are. They go up to the battle of Carchemish. That's where they were headed to. And this is where the Assyrians and the Egyptians are going to fight. And they're going to fight the Babylonians. And the Assyrians and the Egyptians are going to lose, okay? And the Egyptians are going to go home. But they stop over to Judah and they take over this land and say, you guys belong to us, okay? And then they go home. All right? So that's all going on in 608. Now, let's talk about King Jehoiakim. We're going to find him in 2 Kings 23, 2 Chronicles 36, but he's also going to show up in Jeremiah, because Jeremiah is a prophet during these last days, and so is Daniel. And he's going to show up in Daniel. All right? So there's a lot more said about this guy, Jehoiakim. 2 Kings 23 says, Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 11 years. Okay, so he's going to reign 11 years. His mother's name was Zebedah, daughter of Pedadiah. She was from Ramah. And here's the key. This is what you want to look for when you look for the kings. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, just as his father had done. His fathers had done. Okay? So always look for this. Was he a good king? Was he a bad king? This tells you he was a bad king. All right, now let's go to chapter 24. During Jehoiakim's reign, what happens? Okay, now Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, invaded the land, and Jehoiakim became his vassal for 3 years. This is all happening at the same time. Okay, Egyptians went home. You guys belong to us now. And the Babylonians follow right behind them, because now they are taking over the whole area. And they're saying, oh no, Judah, you don't belong to Egypt. You belong to us. Okay? And he made him a vassal, like a puppet king. You're going to do what we say, Jehoiakim, for 3 years. Okay? So again, here comes the Babylonians. Now, in 2 Kings 24, watch what it says. Then he turned and rebelled against him. Okay? So Jehoiakim says, I'm going to follow you for a while, but not forever. And the Lord sent against him. Oh, the Lord did. See, the Lord is in control, right? God is in control here. And he sent bands of Chaldeans, these are the Babylonians, bands of the Syrians, bands of the Moabites, bands of the Amorites, and sent them against Judah to destroy it. Wow. Actually, God is behind this. Because what's happening? They are getting away from God again. Josiah was a good king. He got things straight. And it's just a few years later, and here goes things bad. And these are his sons, okay? Jehoiakim. To destroy it according to the word of the Lord that he spoke by his servants the prophets. This was all predicted. If you get away from me, I will send you into slavery. I will send people against you. I will fight against you when you go into the land. This is what God does. This is the history lesson we need to learn here. Surely this came about upon Judah at the command of the Lord. Wow. To remove them from his sight. Wow, that's not good. For the sins of Manasseh, according to all that he had done, and also the innocent blood that he had shed, for he filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, and the Lord would not pardon. It's like, this is set in stone. This is what I'm going to do. Okay? So he is remembering these bad kings of the past, like Manasseh, and all the evil that they brought in, and now he's bringing judgment. Can God do that? Absolutely, he can. So then we go to 605 BC. Okay, this is the 3 years later when he starts to rebel. So what happens? The Egyptians are going to go back and unite with what's left of the Assyrians. There's not a lot of them left. And they're going to go back and they're going to fight the Babylonians, okay? Well, at the same time, Judah's watching all this and saying, you know what? We're going to rebel against the Babylonians too. We're not paying your taxes, okay? And then there's a battle up there in Carchemish. And what happens? The Assyrians now are fully destroyed. There's nothing left of them. They're off the scene forever. And the Egyptians, they lose. And they go home. And the Babylonians take over this area. They're the new kids on the block, okay? We are dominating everything. So I want you to see, while this is happening, I want you to see King Jehoiakim's evilness. Just to see how evil he is. So now we're going to go to the book of Jeremiah, okay? So here's the king. He rebels, okay? In the 4th year of Jehoiakim, son of Josiah, okay, king of Judah. This is the 4th year. He rebelled in the 3rd year. Okay, he was vassal to the Babylonians for 3 years. That's when he rebelled. Now it's the 4th year. Babylonians straighten this guy out. I want you to see how this guy acts. The word of the Lord came to Jeremiah from the Lord. Okay, so here's God talking to Jeremiah. Take a scroll, write on it all the words that I have spoken to you concerning Israel, Judah, and all the other nations from the time I began speaking to you in the reign of Josiah until now. Okay? Perhaps when the people of Judah hear about every disaster I plan to inflict on them, each of them will turn from his wicked ways, and then I will forgive their wickedness and their sin. Well, that's pretty cool. There's always hope here, isn't there? Write these words to these people and tell them. So he does, and they go out and read this to the people. Jeremiah 36:20. After they put the scroll in the room of Elikama, the secretary, they went to the king in the courtyard and reported everything to him. So now they're telling King Jehoiakim, hey, this is what was happening here. These words are being read to the people. The king sent Jehudi to get the scroll, and Jehudi brought it from the room of Elishama, the secretary, and read it to the king and all the officials standing beside him. It was the 9th month, and the king was sitting in the winter apartment, with a fire burning in the fire pot in front of him. Whenever Jehudi had read 3 or 4 columns of the scroll, the king cut them off with the scribe's knife, threw them into the fire pot, until the entire scroll was burned in the fire. And the king and all of his attendants who heard all these words showed no fear, and they did not tear their clothes. So what's Jehoiakim doing? He's saying, I ain't listening to God. I ain't listening to this. He's not only not listening to the Babylonians, right? He not only rebels against them, he is rebelling against God. Can you imagine taking the Bible and cutting it off, and tearing it up, and throwing it into the fire? I'm not listening to this. Okay, let's see how that works for you. This guy's evil. And so is the people working for him. So there he is. He's cutting the word of God. He's throwing it into the fire. I'm not listening. Now, let's go to Jeremiah 22, verse 18 and 19. Therefore, this is what the Lord says about Jehoiakim, son of Josiah, king of Judah. Okay, now I got to let you know, the book of Jeremiah is not written in chronological order. The chapters are mixed up. Okay, so we're doing a little bouncing here. Okay. They will not mourn for him. Who? Jehoiakim. Alas, my brother, alas, my sister, they will not mourn for him. Alas, my master, alas, his splendor. He will have the burial of a donkey, dragged away and thrown outside the gates of Jerusalem. That's what's going to happen to this guy. That's what God's saying about him. We're not going to mourn for you. Now, let's go to the book of Daniel. And let's look for Jehoiakim here also. Okay? Well, this is going to help us with our history. All right? So this is an evil king. He does bad things. We're going to go back a year. We were just in his 4th year. Now we're going to go back to his 3rd year. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, this is when he rebelled against the Babylonians. Okay? The king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. It's like, wait a minute, you ain't listening to me? I control you people, and you are rebelling against me, King Jehoiakim, right? I'm coming and bringing my army, and I'm going to lay a siege around Jerusalem. And the Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, into Nebuchadnezzar's hand. Okay? God's like, I'm going to take you out, along with some of the articles of the temple of God. There he carried it off to his temple of his God, this is Nebuchadnezzar, in Babylonia, and put in the treasure house of his God. So he is taking some of the articles, okay? And he's not just going to do that, but he's going to take some people with him, all right? So here it is, 605 BC, and he goes over here to Judah. We talked about this a minute ago. And he's going to take some things from the temple and some people back to Babylon. Now, this is the first exile of the tribe of Judah. He's not taking everybody. He's just taking some. Watch who he takes. Daniel chapter 1, verse 3 through 5. Then the king ordered Aspenaz, chief of the court officials, to bring in some of the Israelites from the royal family and the nobility. So he took some royal people with him. He didn't take King Jehoiachin yet, but he will later, okay? But not now. He's still going to be king, okay? Young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing an aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace. He was to teach them the language and literature of the Babylonians. The king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table, and they were to be trained for 3 years. And after that, they were to enter the king's service. All right. That's how Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and Daniel got to Babylon. Okay? We're learning from history here. Now, you look at all this and you go, wow, this is all doom and gloom. This is bad. Okay? Lots of things have happened to the southern tribe. They've got bad leaders at this time. Bad things are happening at this time. Other nations are taking them over. Is there any hope? Well, I remember Richard Rogers telling us this when I went to preaching school. He said, guys, I don't mind you guys at all getting into the book of Isaiah and other books of the Bible of the Old Testament and teaching doom and gloom, God's judgment. I don't have no problem with that. But he says, if you're going to get in that pulpit and teach that stuff, you make sure you end it out with hope, because there is always hope. And if you don't do that, you have no business getting into that pulpit. I remember those days. I remember him telling me that. And I think he's right. So let's look at some hope here. Let's go back to the book of Jeremiah. Now here's Jeremiah. The Babylonians are coming in, laying siege to Jerusalem, taking people away in different waves. He's the prophet that's alive during this whole time. Excuse me. We had a cold front go through last night, and this is, well, you know how it is. So watch what he says here while all this judgment has taken place. Excuse me. The whole country will become a desolate land, and these nations will serve the king of Babylon 70 years. Well, is that hope? Well, yes and no. It's pretty bad that God's going to just turn Judah into a wasteland. But when the 70 years are fulfilled, and I will punish the king of Babylon and his nation, the land of the Babylonians for their guilt. Isn't that interesting? And this is the pattern you're going to see. God will use an evil nation to come to destroy his people because they got away from God. And then he will turn around and destroy them because they didn't turn to God. And you will see this pattern all the way through the Old Testament and even the New Testament. God will do this. Nobody is exempt. This is his pattern. This is what he does. He does this to nations. He's been doing it from the beginning of time. And it all has to do with, will you obey me or will you not? And he can do that with his people, and he can do that with nations that are not his people. And he does that to everybody. And he can do that to us, the United States. And I'm not so sure he's not doing that right now. That's the lesson that we need to learn from this. So here's the hope. The land of the Babylonians for their guilt, declares the Lord, and will make it desolate forever. I will bring upon that land all the things I have spoken against it. all that is written in this book of prophecy by Jeremiah against all the nations. They themselves will be enslaved by many nations and great kings, and I will repay them according to their deeds and the works that of their hands. Okay? So, God says, after 70 years are fulfilled, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to take out the Babylonians. Now that's hope. Okay? But then look over at Jeremiah 29. This is what the Lord says: when the 70 years are completed for Babylon, I will come to you and fulfill my gracious promise to bring you back to this place. Look at the word gracious. Gracious has got the word grace in it. Is there grace here? Yes, there is. He's saying when 70 years of captivity is up, I'm going to bring you back to the land. That's grace. So you can see God's judgment, and at the same time you can see God's grace. For I know the plans I have for you. He's talking to Judah. Declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. There's that word hope. Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with what? With all of your heart. I will be found by you, declares the Lord. And I will bring you back from captivity. I will gather you from all the nations and places that I have brought. I can't see that behind there. Have taken you to, declares the Lord, and will bring you back to this place which I carried you into exile. So God is in charge of taking them away, and he is also in control of bringing them back. So who is in control? God. He is always in control. Is he in control today on election day? Yes, he is. We need to do our part and vote, but he's in control. Okay? Now, back to Jehoiakim. 2 Chronicles 36, 6 and 7. This is at the end. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, attacked him and bound him with bronze shackles. This is Jehoiakim. And to take him to Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar also took to Babylon articles from the temple of the Lord and put them in his temple there. So this is at the end of Jehoiakim's reign. He reigned 11 years. He rebels again. So guess what? Nebuchadnezzar comes back again. And he's going to haul him away and take him to Jerusalem, or to Babylon, into slavery. Now we're going to have another king when that happens. And this is Jehoiachin. We have Jehoiakim, we have Jehoiachin. And this is how I learned it in preaching school. You got Kimmy and Chinny. Okay, that's how I remembered these. 36:8, 2 Chronicles. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoiakim, the abominations which he did, and what was found against him, indeed are they not written in the books of the kings, right? Kings of Israel and Judah. Then Jehoiachin, his son, reigned in his place. Now let's talk about this guy, Jehoiachin. He was 8 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months and 10 days. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord. Okay, not a good king. Now, how old is he? I've got an underline here. He's 8 years old. Now, notice the translation I have. This is the King James Version. Okay, the New King James Version. Now let's go over here to 2 Kings 24. This is the English Standard Version. He carried away all Jerusalem and all the officials and all the mighty men of valor, 10,000 captives. This is King Nebuchadnezzar, okay? And all the craftsmen and the smiths, none remained except the poorest people of the land. And he carried away Jehoiachin to Babylon, the king's mother, the king's wives. Wait a minute. The king's wives? His officials and the chief men of the land he took into captivity from Jerusalem to Babylon. Wow. Now wait a minute. You have an 8-year-old having wives? That's pretty strange. Well, here's the thing. We have a problem with translations here and documents, okay? Your Hebrew documents. And other documents say that he was 18 years old, not 8 years old. So I'm going to go with those documents because that makes more sense. I think the New King James incorrectly translated this as 8, and it should have been 18. And more evidence shows that he was 18 years old. That makes a little more sense that he had wives and how evil he was. Okay. So he took these people away. Verse 16. And the king of Babylon brought captive to Babylon all the men of valor, 7,000, and the craftsmen and the metal workers, 1,000, all the strong and fit for war. And the king of Babylon made Matthahiah and fit for war. And the king of Babylon made this guy, Jehoiakim's uncle, king in his place, and he changed his name to Zedekiah. Zedekiah. So this is happening in 597 BC. And puts this guy in, and he rebels, and so they go back and they haul a bunch of people away. And they take them to Babylon. This is the second exile. You're learning a lot of history here, okay? Now remember, you're moving down. Your numbers are going down instead of up because you're moving to the year 0 around Christ's time, and then at Christ's death you're moving upward and you're adding years. So BC you're moving towards 0, and then AD you're moving away from 0. Okay, does that make sense? So we're in 597 BC now. Now we have King Zedekiah. And we're going to find out about him in 2 Kings 24 and 2 Chronicles 36. At the turn of the year, King Nebuchadnezzar sent and brought him to Babylon with the valuable articles of the house of the Lord, and he made his kinsman Zedekiah king over Judah and Jerusalem. So now Jehoiachin is gone, took him away, and now he puts in his place his uncle Zedekiah. Okay? Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. So he's going to reign 11 years also. His mother's name was Hamalutal, and the daughter of Jerimiah of Libnah. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. Always look for that. He's an evil king too. We've just had evil king after evil king after evil king right here at the end. According to all that Jehoiakim had done. For because of the anger of the Lord, it came to the point in Jerusalem and Judah that he cast them out from his presence. And Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. Not a smart move. 2 Kings 25. In the 9th year of his reign, okay, so we're almost at the end of his reign, in the 10th month of the 10th day of the month, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came with all of his army against Jerusalem and laid siege to it. This is the 3rd time he's had to bring his army to Jerusalem because you have king after king after king rebel. This will be the 3rd and last exile of Judah, and it's over. And they built siege works all around it, so the city was besieged until the 11th year of King Zedekiah. So this lasted over a year. On the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine was so severe in the city that there was no food for the people of the land. Then a breach was made in the city, and all the men of war fled by night by the way of the gate between the 2 walls and the king's garden, and the Chaldeans, which are the Babylonians, were around the city, and they went in the direction of Arabah, but the army of the Chaldeans pursued the king and overtook him in the plains of Jericho, and all the army was scattered from him. Then they captured the king, brought him up to the king of Babylon at Riblah, and they passed sentence on him. They slaughtered the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes. And they put out the eyes of Zedekiah and bound him in chains and took him to Babylon. Not good. Because they're not listening to God. And they're rebelling against this nation that God put in there. Jeremiah is prophesying and telling them to listen to him, and they won't. Doesn't matter what king's in there, if it's Jehoiakim or Jehoiachin or Zedekiah. They're all evil people. Okay, they're all rebelling. And God just takes them out one at a time, one at a time, one at a time. Takes more and more people away. And now it's done. It's over. Judah's gone. So here's this promised land that God promised forever. And it's all gone. And one thing you got to understand is when you go back to Moses, when he told them that you're going into the promised land, it was conditional. I'll give you this land forever. But if you rebel against me and bring in other gods, I'll take you away into slavery. Here it is, the fulfillment of Moses' words all the way back to Deuteronomy. Are we learning a lesson here? I hope so. So here comes the Babylonians in 586 BC, and they take everybody away, and only the very poorest and lame and people are left in the land. And it's just desolate. And everybody now is over here in Babylon. Third exile. Verse 8, in the 5th month of the 7th day of the month, that was the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, the captain of the bodyguard, a servant of the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem, and he burned the house of the Lord, and the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem. Every great house was burned down. All the army of the Chaldeans, or the Babylonians, were with the captain of the guard, broke down the walls around Jerusalem, and the rest of the people who were left in the city and the deserters who had deserted to the king of Babylon, together with the rest of the multitude, Nebuchadnezzar, the captain of the guard, carried into exile. But the captain of the guard left some of the poorest of the land to be vine dressers and plowsmen. It's over. Now the temple is destroyed. Conclusion. I want you to see here what it says in Isaiah. Now, Isaiah was written about 200 years before all this took place. He says, when your judgments come upon the earth, the people of the world learn righteousness. When what? Your judgments. Is that when man learns? Yeah. Though grace is shown to the wicked, they do not learn righteousness. Isn't that sad? You mean when God is good to us, we don't learn anything? But it's only when his judgments come, that's when man starts to learn. Are we that bad? Yeah, I think we are. I think we are. That's what it takes in my life. God has blessed me so many times, but it's when I finally start learning, right? When judgment comes. Does God love us enough to hurt us? And he does. What's going to happen to our nation? What is happening to our nation? Our nation that is getting farther and farther away from God. Some tough things are happening for sure. Now let's go to Revelation. And Revelation is going to back this up. And this is what it says in Revelation 16:7. And I heard the altar respond, yes, Lord God Almighty, true and just are your judgments. So here's the altar representing, I don't know, God's people. And they're saying, we're good with that. Your judgments are just, and they are true. That's how God operates. That's how he works in our world. So we've seen pictures of both God's grace and judgments in Judah's last days. May we learn from these lessons so that we do not repeat these things in our lives today. And shouldn't we learn from this? God does not want to hurt us. He wants to bless us. He wants good things for us. But if we keep going against him and turning our backs on him, he will judge us. And that's how God operates. And these are why these lessons in this Old Testament are there, to learn these things about God. I pray this lesson has been good for you, and I pray that we all turn in repentance towards God and listen to him, because he only wants good things for us. He's not wanting to hurt us. But if we won't listen, he will, because he loves us that much. God bless you. Pray you've been blessed, and we will see you next time with our next lesson. In fact, I might just record that today and put 2 videos out today. Hey, we'll see you next time.